Why some people feel older than their age isn't a personality quirk or a sign of higher intelligence. It's a psychological pattern. And once you see it clearly, much of your inner experience starts to make sense. Some people don't just feel older than their peers. They've felt that way for as long as they can remember. Even as children, they sensed a distance between themselves and others their age. They noticed more, thought further ahead, took things seriously while others moved freely. It wasn't superiority, it was awareness arriving early. That early awareness usually forms in environments where emotional stability isn't guaranteed. Not always through obvious trauma, but through inconsistency, shifting moods, adults who were overwhelmed, situations where paying attention mattered. In those conditions, the mind adapts quickly. It learns to monitor tone, anticipate outcomes, and stay alert. Not because it wants to, because it has to. This is where early emotional maturity actually begins, not as wisdom, but as adaptation. When a child senses that things can change suddenly, play becomes secondary to observation. Curiosity turns into caution. Instead of being fully inside the moment, the mind starts tracking what might happen next. This doesn't feel like fear at the time. It feels like responsibility, like being thoughtful. But underneath it is an unspoken rule. Staying aware prevents damage. Over time, this creates someone who regulates themselves early. They think before speaking. They notice patterns in people. They learn what's safe to express and what's better kept inside. On the outside, this looks like maturity. On the inside, it's constant mental movement. This is why many people who feel older than their age say they think too much. But that thinking isn't random. It's rehearsed awareness. The mind doing what it learned early on, anticipating emotional consequences to reduce risk. Instead of spontaneity, there's calculation. Instead of immersion, there's distance. That distance shapes how life is experienced. You're rarely fully inside moments. You're slightly above them, watching, measuring reactions, reading between lines. This often gets mistaken for calmness or detachment, but it's vigilance turned inward. The trade-off shows up slowly. Emotional depth develops early, but ease does not. These individuals understand nuance and contradiction long before their peers, but they often struggle to relax into joy. Happiness can feel temporary, like something that needs to be protected. Even good moments are quietly monitored. Socially, this creates a sense of being out of sync. Conversations feel shallow. Behavior feels predictable. You start feeling older not because you know more, but because you recognize patterns faster. As this carries into adulthood, people reflect it back to you. You're called mature, grounded, an old soul. It sounds like praise, but it rarely feels accurate, because it ignores the cost. What they're noticing is that you learned to carry weight early, emotional and cognitive, and you did it quietly. Most people who feel older than their age aren't that way by choice. Their nervous system hasn't learned yet that constant awareness is no longer necessary, that thinking ahead isn't required for safety anymore. And until that permission is felt, life can feel heavier than it should. Not because something is wrong with you, but because something shaped you early, and your mind hasn't stood down yet. What often goes unnoticed about early emotional maturity is that it doesn't automatically shut off when life becomes calmer. Even when external conditions improve, the internal posture stays the same. The mind remains slightly ahead, slightly braced. Over time, that constant readiness starts to feel like age. This is why many people who feel older than their age also feel tired in a way rest doesn't solve. It isn't physical exhaustion, It's cognitive and emotional fatigue, years of anticipating, years of holding context, years of quietly managing what might happen next. Eventually, this shapes identity. You begin to see yourself as the observer, the one who notices patterns, the one who understands dynamics without needing them explained. This can feel stabilizing, even grounding, but it comes with a cost. You don't fully belong to moments anymore. You hover just outside them. That's where the sense of being older deepens. While others learn through trial and error, you learned through anticipation. While others recover after mistakes, you tried to prevent the mistake entirely. Not out of fear, but because your system learned early that consequences mattered, sometimes more than they should have. So the maturity forms quietly, internally, without celebration. The problem is that this kind of maturity doesn't come with permission to be light. There's no internal signal that says it's safe to loosen your grip. Awareness becomes default, and default slowly becomes identity. This is why validation matters so much for people who feel older than their age. Not praise, explanation. Someone naming that this wasn't random, that it wasn't imagination or personality. It was adaptation doing exactly what it was designed to do. Without that understanding, many people turn the explanation inward. They assume they're just wired this way, naturally serious, naturally distant, naturally older. And that belief quietly limits what they allow themselves to experience. But early emotional maturity isn't destiny. It's a skill learned under pressure. The same mind that learned to think ahead can learn to come back into the present. But that shift doesn't happen through effort. It happens through safety. The nervous system has to experience that nothing falls apart when awareness relaxes. At first, that feels uncomfortable. Letting go of constant monitoring can feel irresponsible. Joy can feel suspicious. Stillness can feel undeserved. These reactions aren't signs of failure. They're signs of a system learning something new. This is where many people get stuck. They understand why they feel older than their age, but don't know how to live differently. Insight alone doesn't rewire habit. Change comes gradually, through moments where nothing bad happens when you stop managing, through experiences where presence doesn't lead to loss. Slowly, the system updates. And when it does, something important shifts. You don't lose depth. You don't become careless. What softens is the grip, the need to stay ahead of everything. You start inhabiting moments instead of scanning them. You allow conversations to unfold without analyzing each turn. You let joy exist without immediately checking how long it's allowed to stay. That isn't regression, it's integration. Feeling older than your age was never a flaw. It was a sign that your awareness developed early. The work now isn't to undo that awareness, but to balance it. To let maturity coexist with ease. You weren't born older, you adapted earlier. And now, that adaptation doesn't have to define you anymore.